What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to take a look at one of the most underrated and one of the most powerful perks in Black Ops 6, and this is Forward Intel. Now I'm sure many of you already understand the power of Forward Intel, you guys have been using it for a while, but I've also had a lot of people confused as to why I'm using this perk and what's so good about it, and they want to know more of the details of how it works, so that's what this video is all about. And let's just dive right into the basics with the description here, and it just mentions it increases the minimap area and shows the direction indicators for revealed enemies. And that's pretty straightforward, and that's exactly what the perk does, but today is more about breaking down exactly how much of a benefit we're going to be seeing from this. And let's dive into the primary characteristic here. This is the increase to your minimap coverage. Now I'm going to be showing everything here with a square minimap, which you should be using anyway. If you're using a round minimap, you're actually losing about 27% of your potential coverage area that you would be getting with the square minimap, so it's an absolute no-brainer to use square. And with this, based on my testing, if you aren't using Forward Intel, the minimap coverage only extends out to about 22 meters in every direction from you, which really isn't a whole lot. Even on a really small map here like Nuketown, that's not going to cover nearly as much as you might think for a small map like this. Now, for those that are curious, I've had a lot of people asking about this. How does this coverage compare to Modern Warfare 3? Many people seem to think that this is smaller than Modern Warfare 3, and it turns out, no, it's actually exactly the same minimap coverage as we had last year. And with that in mind, how much does the Forward Intel perk help with your minimap coverage? Well, it looks like it's a 1.5 times multiplier here. So now our minimap will extend out to 33 meters in every direction, which gives us significantly more coverage. You can see on Nuketown, if you're toward the center of the map, you're going to be seeing almost all of the map from there. And let's look at a few other examples here. So we're not just looking at one small map in the game, although my next example is also a small map, but I really wanted to show on Babylon. If you're toward the middle map area with Forward Intel, you can see pretty much the entire map, especially if you angle yourself right. You literally can see the entire map with Forward Intel, whereas you can't do that without Forward Intel. Then on a very noticeably bigger map, Rewind, we can see Forward Intel is going to go a long way. You can at least see basically the entire width of the map as you're moving through it, which is very helpful. You can kind of get coverage on all of those lanes, but obviously you're not going to be seeing the entire map or anything. Still way better than the default minimap coverage. And then finally, let's have a look at Skyline here. And once again, that Forward Intel minimap coverage is going to cover easily the entire width of the map at all times, which is very helpful for detecting flanks. And while you can't really see end to end with it, you can see a really good portion. If you're pushed up toward mid-map, you're going to be able to see pretty much everything that's going on around you outside of the end zone spawn points. So this benefit alone from Forward Intel is incredibly powerful for anybody that is consistently using their minimap, which you really should be. That's one of the biggest things that will often separate a good player from an average to below average player, is the frequency at which they're checking their minimap and using that information to make informed decisions, rather than just kind of guessing as they're moving through the map, or maybe just catching the odd red dot here or there and then chasing it. Reading a minimap properly is about much more than that, and the more coverage you have, the more precise information you're able to gather from that, and that will allow you to make even better decisions while you're playing the game. So on its own, that benefit makes Forward Intel worthwhile, and that's the primary reason I use the perk. However, we do have an additional benefit with this, and that is the fact that when enemy players appear on that minimap, instead of just showing up as a dot, they show up as an arrow that shows the direction that they're looking, at least as a snapshot in that moment. So it's kind of like when you have the harp score streak in the air. Aside from the fact that it doesn't follow them in real time, it doesn't track the direction they're looking at in real time either, it's just going to show up as a snapshot. So if they fire an unsuppressed gun, for instance, you will see them pop up and you'll see the direction they were looking at in the moment where they fired the gun. But if they turn around immediately after that, then you're not going to be able to tell that from your minimap. And it's the same thing if they get pinged by a scout pulse or a UAV, for instance. You'll get that snapshot of where they are and which direction they were looking at in that moment. But again, it doesn't follow them in real time. I should also point out, this actually pairs fairly nicely with a new perk they added to the game, which is Shrapnel Radar, and that will ping enemies on the minimap if you hit them with lethals or various tactical equipment. If you guys are looking for a breakdown of that perk, I just recently covered this as well, and I will leave that link down below, so make sure you check that one out. And on top of this, an interesting thing to point out is directional arrows on the minimap work different in Black Ops 6 compared to previous years of Call of Duty, and we actually get a little bit of extra information. What I mean by this is, in previous Call of Duty games, when enemies just showed up as a dot on the minimap without the directional arrow, you would also get an elevation indicator. So you'd get a little arrow above the dot that would indicate that that enemy is not on your level and they're actually above you in elevation. Or if they were below you, you'd get a little arrow underneath the dot. And if they were on the same elevation, there'd be no arrow at all. So that's actually really important information to know. But the problem in older CODs is the moment they showed up as an arrow instead of a dot, you would lose that elevation indicator. And therefore, in some ways, having enemies show as arrows on the minimap would give you less information rather than more information. But in Black Ops 6, they're handling it different here, and they have the little arrow next to the dot, and it does still appear when the enemy is showing as a directional arrow, which just makes this slightly more powerful than older Call of Duty games. And now there's one last thing I wanted to cover that kind of relates to forward intel. It's not actually directly tied to forward intel, but I feel like it's an important thing to point out alongside this video, and that is in Black Ops 6, previously, if anything was happening more than 50 meters away from you, it actually wouldn't show on the minimap. So if enemies were firing unsuppressed guns, but they were 51 meters away from you, you wouldn't get a dot even on the edge of your minimap. And that even applied to your teammates' arrows. If you got more than 50 meters away from a teammate, their little indicator on the edge of the minimap would suddenly disappear. That has recently been fixed, and now they will show up regardless of the distance, at least within the multiplayer experience here, and the distances that we can reach in multiplayer. And I just felt that was important to note since we are talking in great detail about the minimap in this game. But with all of that combined, everything we know about forward intel, and combining that with the fact that it's a tier 2 perk, and honestly, the competition in tier 2 isn't that strong. It's not like the tier 1 perks. I would argue that this is by far the most powerful tier 2 perk we have in the game right now. And it's actually become a little bit of a crutch for me due to the fact that our default minimap radius is just not great. You really can't see much of the map. On many of the maps, you can't even see the width of the map all the way through, and therefore it's really easy for enemies to sneak through and flank you without you getting that proper information. And since forward intel is a reasonably late unlock as well, this is one of the items I would absolutely recommend spending a permanent unlock token on as you're prestiging if you haven't done so already. I actually ended up using my third permanent unlock token on forward intel since I do feel it is that powerful and it makes that much of a difference to my gameplay experience. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts on this perk, and I'd love to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, how are you guys feeling about the base minimap coverage we have in the game? Do you guys think it's tuned just fine as it is, or do you think that should be larger by default? And second, how are you feeling about the forward intel perk? Are you like me, where you now use this on the majority of your class setups? Or not? Maybe is there another tier 2 perk that you find is just more useful? Just let me know down below. Also, like I said, just a reminder, if you guys haven't seen that shrapnel radar breakdown video, I feel it's important to at least understand how it works. I will leave a link to that video in the description down below, and if there's any other perks in the game that you feel are just confusing and you want some clarity on, I'd be happy to cover a few more of them. I'm obviously not going to cover every perk in the game because some of them are very self-explanatory, but let me know if there are any other perk breakdowns you'd like to see. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.